it's really difficult to decide what the biggest single challenge is around scaling up the hydrogen industry. I think there are actually a number of really key challenges that we need to overcome, not just from a UK lens, but probably further afield across Europe too. There are some real challenges around speeding up the processes of planning, permitting, and the kind of governmental approvals that will support some of these projects coming forward. And it's critical that we can kind of move forward at pace with those, even if we have to go back and revisit them. So in other words, we're not trying to get these processes all perfect from the get-go, but we can actually get them into place, move forward, develop the hydrogen industry, and then make sure we look back and check that those policies are delivering the sorts of actions that we envisaged they would. The second is certainly around skills and labour. So a lot of the companies that we work with at the CBI are already facing real challenges in terms of being able to access the labour they need to do standard turnaround work, for instance, on refineries or petrochemical plants. And that's for the industry and the equipment that is there today. So if they're struggling today, imagine trying to translocate those skills and resources over to developing a new industry like the hydrogen industry. And so getting really clear about what sort of skills we need and where the resources are going to come from, that's important to debottlenecking the development of the hydrogen economy. And finally, I guess there's something around matching the supply and demand side. So it's the market conditions effectively. And it's quite easy in a sense to envisage what those might look like in 10, 15, 20 years' time. But the bigger challenge is about how we get to those idealistic or normal market conditions in 10, 15, 20 years' time from where we are today. And that's where there's a real challenge around matching the supply and demand from the point of view of hydrogen. And so, we may have to accept some suboptimal solutions in the short term so that we can get to that longer term solution around supply and demand for hydrogen. In the Humber, we've got an awful lot of ambition. It's the UK's energy estuary. And at the CBI, we're looking at how we can incentivise progress around hydrogen and other aspects of decarbonisation. So what have we actually achieved in terms of spades in the ground, concrete and steel work? Not a massive amount. We have broken ground in terms of being able to look at things like environmental survey work for some of the projects. Our colleagues over at Equinor, for example, only this week, in fact yesterday, received planning permission to move forward with the H2H Salt End project in Hull. Now that's a blue hydrogen production facility, about 600 megawatts, I think. We've also got a whole plethora of different green hydrogen electrolysis projects also slated in and around the Humber. Many of those are in advanced discussions now, both with the government from the point of view of policy support, but also most importantly with off-takers too, so that they can understand where that hydrogen is going to go to. So we're seeing early signs. We've got plans around the use of hydrogen, for example, in the world's first hydrogen-fueled power station, and that's going to be developed by SSE at Keadby. But key to unlocking a lot of this activity in the hydrogen sector in the Humber, or any other cluster for that matter, is around the infrastructure that supports that. So thinking about pipelines and storage, for example, and in the Humber, one of our companies, Centrica, along with SSE, are also doing a lot of work to evaluate how they can manage the storage of hydrogen. And that will effectively allow them to better manage the kind of supply and demand in terms of things like curtailed wind power for hydrogen production, etc., to smooth out those potential variations in hydrogen supply and demand. This morning's conversations, I think, have been really, really insightful. Hearing about some of the shared lessons and shared learnings from around Europe, but also further afield in terms of some of the activity in hydrogen space is really critically important. Every hydrogen application, every hydrogen producer, supplier, every cluster needs to remember that not only do they have things to share at an event like this one, the Go Hydrogen Business Summit, but there are also many, many things that they can learn by speaking to other clusters, other operators. And already we've heard some really fantastic insights around the use of things like ammonia and ammonia storage and ammonia cracking back into hydrogen, the connectivity, as it were, between wind and hydrogen production, and of course, as we just mentioned, about how you might need to store hydrogen and where you might do that. So there's some really great insights, but I think most importantly, not only do we have a great series of presenters, we also have a really interesting collection of attendees from across a wide space of industry sectors, which gives for some great conversation here. So it's a fantastic event.